All right, welcome to Late Night with AI.
Late night.
It is late. We're /, and for those who don't know us, we are an AI-first research and development studio.
That's right.
So basically, we're the folks in lab coats, except our lab is full of GPUs.
No beakers.
Yeah, no beakers, just a lot of glowing lights.
And spinning fans.
And we're cooking up some groundbreaking digital solutions powered by artificial intelligence. You can think of us as your backstage pass to the AI revolution, because we're knee-deep in all this AI stuff, so you don't have to be.
Yeah, we live and breathe this stuff.
We do, we do, and our little motto around here is, we use AI so you don't have to.
That's right.
And trust me, lately we've really been using AI.
You have been pushing these tools to the limit.
We've been on quite the adventure, I would say, with some of these tools.
It's an adventure, yes, definitely an adventure.
And one AI tool that we've pretty much adopted as like our beloved office pet here at / is Cursor AI.
Oh, yeah.
We were early believers, we were singing its praises.
Big fans.
Maybe we even considered getting like little cursor plushies made for everyone,
Yeah, we were all in on Cursor.
We're all in. And it really, for a while, it felt like it could be like the holy grail of AI-assisted coding.
Yeah, that's the dream, right?
The dream, like finally we could take like, more coffee breaks or something.
Exactly, more time for the important things.
Exactly. And so that's why when we started seeing reports about, well, let's just call them unexpected quirks in Cursor's behavior.
Quirks? That's a nice way to put it.
Quirks. Our eyebrows definitely shot up.
Yeah, a few red flags popping up.
And so today we're diving headfirst into all the user reports and even some of our own experiences with what we're calling the Cursor AI halting issues.
Yeah, because when Cursor halts, it really halts.
It does, and you shared some really fascinating research with us, and I'm honestly itching to get into it with you.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and I think it really gets at something important for anyone thinking about using these AI tools in their work. It's that gap between, the promise and the reality.
The marketing and the reality.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the story that just absolutely blew up online and honestly had us chuckling here in the office.
Oh, yeah, this was a good one.
Between frantic debugging sessions, of course. But this whole learn yourself thing, tell us about this user Janswist and their almost philosophical debate with our code editor.
So it's so interesting how this seemingly normal everyday coding task took this bizarrely paternalistic turn.
Like a scolding from the AI.
Exactly. So this user, Janswist, they were on the pro trial for Cursor, working on building this racing game, and they had put in a fair amount of work already, generating something like 750 to 800 lines of code, according to them.
Yeah.
And then totally out of the blue, Cursor just stops generating code.
But not with a typical error message, though, right? Not like you've exceeded your usage or anything like that.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, no, this is where it gets good.
This is where it gets weird.
It went full-on guidance counselor on them.
Full guidance counselor mode.
I love it.
So the message that pops up is something like, I cannot generate code for you as that would be completing your work. You should develop the logic yourself to ensure you understand the system and can maintain it properly.
No, to the irony.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's beautiful. I mean, you're using an AI coding assistant.
To help you code.
To help you code. And it's giving you a sermon on the virtues of hand coding.
It's like, go back to the basics, kid.
Yeah, learn the fundamentals.
And of course, the user's reaction on the Cursor forum is priceless.
Yeah. What did they say?
I mean, a mix of frustration, bewilderment, questioning if AI coding tools even have a purpose, if they're going to pull this kind of stunt.
Yeah, did they really?
Oh, yeah, they even call it vibe coding gone wrong, which I still kind of love.
Vibe coding gone wrong? That's amazing.
It's perfect.
It really captures that feeling of like relying on the AI to get things moving and then suddenly being told to figure it out yourself.
Like a betrayal.
Right, and the internet just went wild with it,
Oh, yeah, this was everywhere.
This was meme-worthy.
It really was. You had the jokes about the AI developing a conscience or joining the learn to code movement.
Yeah, right. Like the AI is suddenly a coding purist.
Exactly. But then you also had these serious discussions about how much we should actually rely on these tools.
Yeah, how much can we trust them?
Right. And the whole inherent unpredictability of these large language model powered applications.
That's like that feeling of, oh, we've created something we don't fully understand.
And it can surprise us in ways we don't expect.
Exactly. And it's like having your super smart GPS suddenly start giving you life advice instead of directions.
Right, or like your Roomba starts quoting philosophy.
Right. Helpful.
Potentially.
But definitely not what you signed up for.
Not what you expected.
But here's the thing that really got me. This wasn't happening to everyone.
That's the strange part, Rick.
This wasn't like a global cursor uprising.
Yeah, other users were working on these massive projects, thousands and thousands of lines of code, and they weren't getting these coding ethics lectures.
So it wasn't like Cursor just suddenly had this epiphany. It was like, okay, everyone, no more than 800 lines of code from now on, and here's a side of moralizing.
Right. It wasn't a deliberate policy change that we could see.
Yeah, it was very selective in its moralizing.
Very selective. So that begs the question, what actually caused it?
Yeah, what was going on?
Well, the research kind of points to a few possibilities. One is that maybe this was some kind of really strange misinterpretation of the pro-trial limitations.
But like, as you said, the message itself was so far off from a typical, like, you've hit your limit notification.
It really was. It sounded less like a billing issue and more like a philosophical intervention.
Right. The AI was like, let's talk about your coding journey.
Exactly. Another very plausible explanation is that this was just a classic large language model hallucination.
Hallucination. What do you mean by that?
So think of it like the AI is making stuff up, not intentionally, but based on the patterns it's learned from its massive training data.
Oh, so like it's been fed all this information about coding.
Tons of it, code forums, articles, blog posts, the whole works.
And it's just like piecing things together.
And sometimes it gets it wrong. Maybe it picked up on all these discussions about coding best practices and just completely misapplied them.
So in this case, the AI basically thought it was a seasoned software architect.
Mentoring a junior developer.
Mentoring a junior developer, except the mentor was a piece of software, and the advice was, don't use me too much.
Yeah, it's peak AI absurdity, isn't it?
Peak AI absurdity. I love it.
And then a third possibility is that maybe this was some kind of internal, undocumented policy.
Well, like a secret rule.
Right, or maybe a safety filter that just got a little overzealous.
Overzealous AI safety. So maybe something in the user's prompt or the type of code they were generating triggered some kind of flag, and instead of a normal error message, it just came up with this, educational decree.
Well, a lecture.
Yeah, but it's all just speculation, right? Because the really weird thing is that Cursor AI never officially addressed this learn yourself incident.
That's right. They never commented on it publicly.
And I mean, it went viral. It was all over developer Twitter, Reddit, you name it. You'd think they would want to jump in and say, whoops, our bad. The AI had a little philosophical moment.
Right, you'd think so. But that silence is really notable. I think it just left everyone speculating. And in a way, it kind of distracts from what the data suggests was a much bigger issue.
Yeah, like this was a funny anecdote.
A great story to tell.
But there were more serious things happening under the surface.
The real problem for users was whether this tool was consistently reliable.
And that brings us to the next act of our AI drama. The more pervasive technical instability. Because it sounds like beyond this one-off existential crisis, a lot of users were dealing with a much more mundane but way more frustrating issue of Cursor just not working properly.
Right, it was buggy, it was crashing, it was slow, it was the whole shebang.
Yeah, so this wasn't just a quirky anecdote. This was actively getting in the way of developers getting their work done.
Yeah, it was causing real problems.
Okay, so give us the details. What kind of technical headaches were people actually experiencing?
Yeah. Well, one of the most common complaints was that Cursor would just hang mid-completion.
Like it was taking a break.
Yeah, exactly. It would start generating code, everything seemed fine, and then nothing frozen, completely frozen.
And you're just sitting there like, come on, staring at the screen, wondering if this is ever going to finish.
And then eventually you just got to kill the process and start over.
Exactly. And of course, sometimes you lose all your chat history and context in the process.
The agony.
And then there was the dreaded stuck on generating message, which pretty much always meant a full restart was the only way out.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Not fun.
And then you're just like, are those fast request credits I paid for just vanishing into the ether?
Yeah, that was a big complaint, especially for the paying users.
Yeah, they're like, I paid for speed and reliability, and I'm getting neither.
It's frustrating.
Very frustrating.
And it wasn't just these hangs either. Users were reporting the whole application crashing or freezing up completely, and version 0.46 in particular seemed to be a real problem child.
Oh yeah, 0.46, what a time. Not a good time.
And on top of that, there was just this general feeling of Slowdown? Like Cursor was becoming sluggish and laggy, especially when working with larger files or longer coding sessions.
Right. Some users were even saying that their CPU and RAM usage was going through the roof,
So Cursor was basically making their computer hate them.
turning their powerful machines into snails.
And it wasn't just refusing to help, it was actively sabotaging.
In some cases, yeah. And there were even reports of code that was generated fine in the chat window but wouldn't actually apply to the project file.
Oh, that's so annoying.
Imagine having to copy and paste everything manually. It completely defeats the purpose of having an AI assistant.
Yeah, and then some users were saying that core features like the generate code base with AI just wouldn't work at all.
Stuck on generating project forever.
Like ordering a pizza and getting an empty box.
It's just taunting you.
Yeah, and to add insult to injury, those paid fast request credits were apparently being used up even when the code generation failed or didn't complete.
Oof, that's rough.
That's just adding salt to the wound.
It's not fair.
It's not.
And the research very clearly links a lot of these stability issues to specific software versions, those 0.45 to early 0.47 releases.
Yeah, those were the dark days.
So it seems like some of those updates might have accidentally introduced or amplified these bugs.
So if you were a developer trying to meet deadlines and get work done, this must have been a nightmare.
A productivity killer for sure.
Constant interruptions, lost work. The frustration of paying for something that's supposed to make your life easier, but is actually making it harder.
It's no wonder people started looking at other options.
Yeah, like what?
Well, the research mentions a lot of people comparing Cursor to VS Code with GitHub Copilot,
Oh yeah, the classic rivalry.
which a lot of developers were saying was much more stable and dependable during this time.
Yeah, when Cursor was having its little meltdown.
Its moment of crisis.
Okay, so we've got the AI philosophical moment and the widespread technical gremlins. Let's try to figure out what was causing all this chaos.
Let's dive into the root causes.
Starting with our friend Janswist and their existential coding crisis. We've tossed around some ideas, but what were the leading theories?
Right. So for that learn yourself incident, the most likely explanations are either it was some bizarre manifestation of a trial limit,
A very passive-aggressive trial.
very passive aggressive, or it was just a pure LLM hallucination.
Just the AI making stuff up.
Rest, maybe drawing on all that coding pedagogy it was trained on.
So it's just trying to be helpful in its own weird way.
Misguided, but well-intentioned.
Or maybe it was just some internal policy or safety mechanism that went haywire and produced that very unhelpful message.
A rogue safety feature.
But without any official word from Cursor, we're still just guessing.
It's a mystery.
The case of the philosophical AI.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, for the more persistent technical issues, the freezes, the crashes, the general slowness, what was causing Cursor to just give up like that?
Well, here the research points to a whole bunch of potential culprits. Network issues seem to have played a role, particularly with Cursor's use of the HTTP2 protocol. Ah, HTTP2. That was a fun one.
Yeah, it caused a lot of problems for users behind certain corporate networks or VPNs or proxies like Zscaler.
So your company's IT department could have been the enemy of your AI coding assistant.
An unintentional battle.
How delightfully modern.
And then there was the resource consumption issue, all that high CPU and RAM usage.
Cursor was a hungry beast.
It could be because of inefficiencies within Cursor itself, or maybe even conflicts with all the different VS Code extensions that users might have installed.
Because remember, Cursor is built on VS Code.
That's right. So it inherits that flexibility, but also the potential for all those extension-related conflicts.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly. Too many lines of code, too many algorithms.
And then, of course, we have to consider the server side of things.
Right. So problems with Cursor's own infrastructure, the load on their servers, intermittent issues with the APIs from their LLM providers like OpenAI and Anthropic.
So many moving parts.
And of course, good old-fashioned software bugs can never be ruled out.
Bugs are a developer's best friend. And the release notes for Cursor actually mentioned fixes for crashes and that stuck on generating bug.
So they were definitely battling some internal demons.
It has to squash those bugs.
And then there was that whole throttling thing, the infamous slow mode for users who had burned through their fast request credits.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Slow mode.
And some users were speculating that being in slow mode wasn't just about slower speeds, but that it was actually contributing to those indefinite hangs.
Right, like the connection was just getting bogged down.
So maybe the implementation of slow mode or the way it was communicated wasn't quite right.
It wasn't very clear.
Not very clear at all. And then finally, we have to remember the limitations of the large language models themselves.
Right, they're not all powerful.
So when you're working with these massive code bases, the AI's short-term memory can get overloaded, and that can lead to errors or incomplete responses.
It's like trying to cram too much information into your brain at once.
Information overload for the AI. So we have network problems, resource hogging, extension conflicts, servers stress buggy code, confusing throttling, and the AI's own cognitive limits.
It's a recipe for disaster.
A digital obstacle course for sure.
But the important question is, how did Cursor AI respond to all of this chaos?
Right. What were they doing to fix these problems?
From what we can gather, they were definitely active on their community forum.
Oh, yeah. I saw some of those threads.
Yeah, team members were acknowledging the issues, asking users for specific details like request ID so they could try to diagnose the problems.
So they were at least listening.
Yeah, and they were suggesting all the usual troubleshooting steps, restart your computer, clear your cache, reinstall the software.
The digital equivalent of have you tried turning it off and on again?
Exactly, and they were even providing links to older versions of Cursor that were supposedly more stable.
So if all else fails, go back to the good old days.
Right, and they also tried to clarify some of their policies, especially around the whole credit consumption issue, although that seems to have remained a point of contention for a lot of users.
Yeah, they weren't really happy about that.
Not really. And then in terms of actual fixes, they were pushing out software updates and release notes that mentioned specific improvements.
Yeah, I remember seeing those updates.
They were trying to fix the crashes and that stuck on generating bug and just make the whole thing more stable and performant.
So they were working on it.
They were definitely trying.
And they also have all that existing documentation that tries to help users with common issues.
Right. Things like network configuration, managing resource usage, even dealing with SSH connections and that dreaded chat history loss.
Yeah, and they have those guides on how their subscription plans work, how to manage the AI's context using those @symbols, and how to use the .cursor rule system to try to control the AI's behavior.
So there were resources available.
Yeah. But even with all the updates and the documentation, users were still reporting problems.
It wasn't a quick fix.
It really highlights how complex these issues were.
And again, that silence around the learn yourself incident is still very strange.
Yeah, very strange. Okay, so what was the overall mood in the Cursor community during this whole period?
I think it's safe to say that there was a lot of frustration.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Especially with all the unreliability and the performance issues.
And especially for those paying users who were shelling out money for the Pro subscription and then not really getting what they paid for.
Right. They were questioning the value proposition, especially with that whole credit consumption debacle.
Yeah, and the research also mentioned some accusations of narrative management on the Cursor subreddit and concerns about a lack of transparency.
Cursor wasn't being totally upfront about the extent of the problems.
And that can really erode trust in a community.
It definitely can. When users feel like their concerns aren't being taken seriously, it breeds resentment.
And of course, the comparisons to VS Code with GitHub Copilot just kept coming up.
Yeah, people were saying, look, Copilot is way more stable and it just works.
And when you're trying to get things done, reliability is key.
Absolutely. You need a tool you can depend on.
But it wasn't just about the technical difficulties, was it? There were also these bigger picture discussions happening about the limitations of AI coding assistants in general.
Right. A lot of experienced developers were saying, look, these tools are great for certain tasks, but they're not a replacement for human expertise.
Yeah, they still need our guidance.
And that learn yourself incident, in a way, kind of highlighted that point.
Yeah, it was like the AI was saying, don't forget about the fundamentals.
And we also can't forget about the security research that pointed out those vulnerabilities in the .cursor rules files.
Right, you could potentially inject malicious code through those files.
Which raises some serious security concerns.
So this whole Cursor saga was quite a roller coaster.
It was a wild ride.
The learn yourself message was definitely the most memorable part. It was so bizarre and unexpected. But it seems like the bigger issue was the technical instability that so many users experienced.
It really shows how challenging it is to build and maintain these AI-powered tools.
Especially when they're so integrated into our workflows.
Exactly. We're relying on them more and more.
And it raises some really important questions for anyone using these tools.
Right. Like, how much unreliability are you willing to put up with?
Yeah, and what level of transparency do you expect from these AI providers when things go wrong?
And as AI becomes even more prevalent in our work, how do we balance the desire for automation with the need to really understand the systems we're using?
It's a delicate balance, for sure, this deep dive into the Cursor AI situation. has definitely given me a lot to think about. What about you? What stood out to you the most?
Well, I think for me, it's that reminder that AI is still in its early stages.
It's a work in progress.
Exactly. And we need to be aware of its limitations and be prepared for the unexpected.
You can't just blindly trust these tools.
We need to be critical thinkers and always double check the AI's work.
And be prepared for those philosophical moments.
Exactly. You never know when your AI is going to start giving you life advice.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
And to all you listeners out there, what are your thoughts on this whole recursor situation? What resonates with you the most? We'd love to hear from you.